Welcome to Politics NY with Skye Behind the Curtain. We are joined by Gabriela Sandoval Requena. She is a Senior Policy Analyst at New Destiny Housing Corporation. So let's get to know a little bit about her and what it is that she's focused on. So welcome, Gabriela.
Absolutely. New Destiny is a 27-year-old nonprofit organization based here in New York, and we are committed to ending the cycle of homelessness and abuse for New Yorkers experiencing domestic violence in particular. And we do this by building and managing new affordable housing with voluntary on-site services. We also run a rapid rehousing program that's called Housing Link, where we connect survivors to housing and all throughout New York City area. And additionally, we advocate for additional housing resources for domestic violence survivors and their families.
Yeah, it's really necessary, learning a lot about the community, hearing what resources are out there. So how did you get into this line of work?
Yeah. When I think that when we met back in 2019, I was doing a healthcare working for the Medicaid redesign program called District. You might have heard about it. I was doing program compliance. But I had started my career back in 2013 doing housing advocacy with Coalition for the Homeless. And after transitioning into healthcare, I realized, my heart is really in advocacy. And I was lucky enough, the stars aligned, that New Destiny had a position open to really start an advocacy department. I had met the executive director, Nicole Branca, and when I was working for the coalition. So it was a really smooth transition for me to come back and join this great team and really tackle the crisis of homelessness that's so imminent in New York City, unfortunately.
And I know it's such a dense topic with a lot of different issues that go hand in hand, but I'm wondering if you could just give a message to our viewers about the state of homelessness and what you're working on to try and correct it, because it's a huge concern, especially during the pandemic. It really came to top of mind for a lot of people.
Absolutely, Skye. So, just to give a little bit of context, at the heart of the crisis of homelessness in New York City is family homelessness. I think that whenever people encounter homelessness, I think that the more evident is our single neighbors, right, that may be on the streets, in the subway. But the invisible folks are the families and the children that live in shelters, or in some cases, doubled up, or meaning sleeping in the living rooms or the couch of their family and friends. And that is the majority of the homeless population in New York City, unfortunately. And at the center of that is domestic violence. For many years, right now, domestic violence has been the leading cause of homelessness in New York City. About 41% of the families that end up going to the Department of Homeless Services shelter identify domestic violence as the main reason for the homelessness, which is followed by evictions. So that's it's just something to keep in mind as we look through the data. Besides that, also there is a separate housing resources administration shelter system that is specific for domestic violence survivors, and that is the largest in the country. New York City has the most emergency shelter beds, which is great, but shelter should not be the only resource, right? We know that what works to solve the crisis of homelessness is housing. So there are a number of advocates who are looking forward to work with the new administration. We have had some recent victories. I do want to mention that we have had a champion for the past 8+ years in the council member Stephen Levin, who spearheaded a tremendous effort that was to raise the city rent subsidy program, city FEPS, up to Section 8 standards. That was huge. And then as recent as the last Friday, Governor Hochul actually signed Assemblymember Rosenthal's and Senator Kavanaugh's FEPS bill that is raising the state FEPS program up to also Section 8 levels. So we have had these two amazing recent victories, and we are super excited now to see this incoming mayoral administration and incoming council members as well and work with them.
Yeah, definitely. And that was going to be my next question is, what do you hope to accomplish now with the new administrations that we're seeing? What's on the table?
So, I think that the very first matter is for the new administration, both city council and the mayor, to pay attention to homelessness, to family homelessness. To put it really at the center and to really have a commitment to addressing it. And there are various things that could be done to solve it or to help alleviate it or to take first steps. I think that the very first steps is to really measure it correctly. I know that to some people this may come as a shock, but whenever we hear data on homelessness, usually people refer to just one of the 5 systems of shelters in the city, and that is the Department of Homeless Services system. So one thing that we would like the new administration to do is to actually overhaul that and create one single census where you count everybody, like runaway homeless youth, the families in the domestic violence shelters, so we can really understand how large the crisis is in the epidemic. So that would be number one. Number two is to take a look really at prevention, right? I mean, if we have if families have the tools to really bypass shelter, then that will be great overall. And then for that, city FEPs, yeah, Councilmember Levin brought it up to the right level. If we could enhance it, like for instance, make it available for more people by doing away with the income requirement, then that would be great. And also, that goes hand in hand with what happens when families leave shelter, right? Many folks unfortunately don't have the resources or the know-how to manage their finances, to manage, to settle in and gain sustainability and or gain housing stability. So that aftercare component is crucial as well. Then there's supportive housing, which is what we do, right? So this builds apartments, buildings, brand new, very nice in New York City, with on-site supportive elements. So expanding the city program that's called New York City 1515 for domestic violence survivors is really one of our key areas as well. Currently, it's very specific for populations that struggle with severe mental health issues and other crises, but it's not made available to domestic violence survivors. So those are a few of the things that we're looking forward to work with the new administration. Super excited to see this new class with a lot of women, a lot of people of color. So I hope that when we have another interview a year from now, Skye, we can talk about all the great things that they have done.
Yes, we certainly hope so. And you mentioned mental illness, and I know that that's been top of mind for everyone. And I actually spoke with the commissioner of the Office of Mental Health for New York State on my show. And I was saying, I think half of us are mentally ill. And she said that statistic is actually accurate, that 1 in 2 people, half of the population, is impacted by mental illness. And I think it has to do a lot with these homelessness issues that you're explaining.
Absolutely. And, going back specifically to domestic violence survivors, right? You have the additional trauma of going themselves through not just homelessness, right? I mean, in many cases, when they're in a situation of abuse at home, they have only 2 choices. That's either stay with their abuser or become homeless, right? So you have that additional level. So that's why supportive housing specific for domestic violence survivors is so key, right? For them and their kids. It's not just,
Yeah, I just started watching the show Made on Netflix. So this reminds me of what you're talking about. She was a victim of domestic violence that chose to leave, and now she's homeless. I've only seen 1 episode so far, but that's what happened in the first episode.
Yep, I have not seen it, but I've heard great things about the book and the show. So it's on my list for sure.
Well, Gabriela Sandoval Requena, thank you so much for joining us on PoliticsNY with Skye and teaching us about New Destiny Housing Corporation. And we look forward to good things in 2022.
Likewise, thank you so much, Skye.